Good evening. Thanks for joining us on our weekly AJA Zoom event. My name is Robert Gregory, and also on the screen we have AJA President Dr. David Adler. If you'd like to ask a question, as usual, just raise your hand in the chat function, and written questions can also be placed in the chat, and if we get a chance, we may get to some, although as regulars know, we don't usually get to all the questions. Tonight, we're going to be hearing an update from Rabbi Ben Packer. Rabbi Packer has been a guest to the AJA before, and he's one of the leading rabbis in Jerusalem, where he runs the Jerusalem Heritage House. Rabbi Packer is active in strengthening the Jewish presence all across the land of Israel, as well as in supporting soldiers across the country. Now, over to you, Rabbi, for an update about the battle for Israel.
Okay, very, very honored to be with you down under. Basically, of course, what's going on right now, as many of you I'm sure are aware, is the ground incursion into Gaza, into the Gaza Strip, which is primarily focusing on the northern part of the Gaza Strip. The army has effectively divided Gaza into two different parts, north and south, and the focus of the fighting is in the north now. That doesn't mean that the south is immune to Israeli attacks, but the ground forces are currently focusing on the north, and thank God it's going very well. Of course, there have been very tragic casualties to soldiers. Approximately 31 soldiers have been killed. However, the gains have been tremendous. Keep in mind, the same Hamas terrorist organization that meticulously planned the horrific terrorist attack also meticulously planned their defense. They knew Israel would come after them, and they planned for that. And nonetheless, thankfully, the Israeli forces have been extremely successful in being able to go through the entire the width of the Gaza Strip all the way to the sea. And basically, currently, the city of Gaza is surrounded. It is believed to be where most of the leadership of Hamas and also possibly the hostages are located, most likely under the Shifa hospital the large hospital in tunnels that we're all probably aware of that exist under that area. So the focus right now of the army, the military forces from the land, air, and sea is on that area. And the successes so far are numerous and very encouraging. Of course, the process is slowed by the existence of the hostages being there. Of course, we want to rescue all of the hostages. So that is what has slowed down in the advancement, but that's fine. And that's what's going on right now on the Gaza Strip. In the Lebanon border, Hezbollah continues to fire projectiles over the border, sometimes anti-tank missiles, sometimes mortars, sometimes rockets. They're having a minimal effect, thankfully. Many people are evacuated from the area. We are suffering casualties here and there, but much less than they are suffering. And so for now, it seems that Hezbollah has decided to stay out, at least for now, of the fight. The entire country is united. Everyone agrees with what the army is doing and the government is doing, which of course hasn't been the case for some time. And everyone is strong. And despite the horrific events of Simchas Torah, October 7th, we're in very good spirits. We want to rescue the hostages. We want to kill Hamas. And we want to return security to the country. So that's, I would say, the situation.
Okay, and so AJA, we just signed a letter calling to return Jewish communities to Gaza. I think we were the only Australian Jewish organization that did that. What's the end goal here? Is that the plan? What's government planning, and what
the government is not talking right now. The government has said that the goals of the operation is to return the hostages and to eliminate Hamas, which of course are very worthy goals and very necessary. However, that they're just, that's not the entire thing. You can't just do that and then walk away. There are ideas being put out there that maybe the Palestinian Authority will take charge there. or some kind of, I don't know, democratic process, or maybe other Arab countries will become involved. None of those ideas, I think, are very serious. They're just things that people say because they don't have what else to say. The Israeli army, Prime Minister Netanyahu alluded to this yesterday, that they're going to have to be there in charge of security for quite some time. And there's no place in Israel where the Israeli army exists on a permanent basis, or even on a regular basis, and Israeli civilians don't. It goes together, whether it's on the Lebanese border, the Jordanian border, whether it's in the different Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria or Jerusalem. Where the army is, where the security forces are, Israeli civilians are as well. That's just the way it is. So the idea that there will be an Israeli military presence in Gaza, but there won't be an Israeli civilian presence, is incredibly unlikely and would be very unfortunate. God willing, there will be Jewish communities back in the Gaza Strip permanently. And this is the solution to the situation. There is no other, really. There's no other realistic solution to the situation.
And what's the situation like in Yehuda and Shomron? How are the Arabs acting there? And are they taking advantage of, I imagine a lot of people from Rekavim, different organizations are in the reserves. Are they taking advantage to claim more land in Area C? What's going on?
I would say no. It's currently there's two things majorly going on in Judea and Samaria. Number one is there are a lot of arrests. The army and security forces are conducting many arrests, mostly of Hamas activists. I mean, you can't separate the Hamas activists in Judea and Samaria and Hamas in Gaza. It's the same. So these people are just as capable of the horror that the people in Gaza did. So they're being arrested. Anyone who's writing threats or anything like that online is being arrested. The army is extremely active in all areas, even though many of the soldiers currently taking part are reservists in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. But they're extremely active on a nightly basis, arresting terrorists and people inciting to terrorism throughout Judea and Samaria. So there's a real crackdown going on in there. Why that didn't happen before, that can be discussed, but that's going on right now. Besides that, the security forces are being very stringent throughout Judea and Samaria. There's not a lot of movement on the roads by the Arab residents, and that is true around the Jewish communities as well. Security is very high. The soldiers are extremely motivated. The first response teams of the different communities are very active in protecting their communities. And protecting their communities doesn't just mean responding to terrorist attacks. It also means preemptively taking action that will prevent potential terrorist attacks by people hanging out around the fence of the community, trying to establish new areas, having established new places in the past around Jewish communities. Those are being removed now. The Biden administration is complaining about that. But that's being done now in order to better the security of the community so that what happened around Gaza does not happen around them.
And you said there's a big sense of unity. How long do you think that will last for? And is it, I've heard that a lot of people that were perhaps formerly left-wing are now becoming, more right-wing in terms of these issues. Do you think that's something that will last?
I do think that's something that will last. First of all, if you look at the Second Intifada, there were similar situations where many people changed their opinions. Listen, the reality is that these people imagined a situation that wasn't real. That's just what it is. If you were to ask them, is Hamas capable of these? Nobody on the right wing is shocked by what Hamas did. Nobody can. They're very saddened. They're very, how it happened and everything, but shocked by what they did? No. Nobody on the right wing is shocked by what they did. Many people on the left wing were shocked by the brutality and the violence and everything. So those people have had a wake-up call. They can't erase that wake-up call. They can't forget it. It's real. It's on video. So I don't know where that will take them, but I don't think they can go back to the imagined situation that they lived in before, where Hamas was just a, social religious organization trying to help their people live a better life. That wasn't the case. That isn't the case. And hopefully they won't think that's the case ever again.
We've seen a very interesting phenomenon here where a lot of left-wing Jews are also it's funny to see a bit in a way. They're very shocked by how their left-wing friends are not standing with them and all the causes they stood up for, the LGB and indigenous, a lot of these things are not standing with them. And that's some very shocked people in the Australian Jewish community. I wanted to ask you about the pressure from the Biden administration. A lot of people said they did very well in the early days and maybe Biden's visit, but it's quite clear that Israel's facing a lot of pressure. What's your opinion on the Biden administration?
Yeah, I mean, the Biden administration hasn't changed their position. These attacks were so horrific. I would maybe this is a little controversial. I don't know, but the Biden administration, I don't think is completely evil or something like that. They just have a distorted worldview when it comes to Israel, and these attacks by Hamas, I think they truly were horrified by them and are against them, and they do believe that Hamas should be destroyed. I think they do believe that. However, they have other plans for Israel that aren't necessarily our plans, and they don't want those to be. They don't want to lose those plans because of what Hamas did, which of course they should. They should realize that this is bigger than Hamas, and they should abandon their fantasies for the region. But they're not going to so quickly. So they have their pressure that they're putting mostly in terms of whether they supply ammunition and Iron Dome missiles and things like that, which is very important. And they're it's not free. They're using their influence, but on the other hand, we're in a situation where we don't have a lot of choice. There's not a lot of choice here in this situation. There's not a lot of room for maneuvering on Israel's side. We're faced with a situation where we more or less know exactly what we have to do, and we've been forced into this. We did not choose this situation. Maybe we should have, but we did not choose this situation. We were put into it. It is what it is, and we are going to have to do what we have to do. All the pressure in the world from the Biden administration won't change that.
So Avigdor Lieberman, he does say a lot of silly things, but some of the things that he says that are okay is he seems to have possibly warned that this could potentially happen with Hamas. And one of the other things is he's been calling for much tougher responses to Hezbollah in the north. Is Israel responding too weakly, and should they be dealing with the north at the same time?
It's a very good question. Avigdor Lieberman does have moments of thoughtfulness. It's bizarre. When he stays away from religion, he does much better. But in general, there's a question. Do you want to fight two enemies at once? In general, the answer is no. You'd rather take one at a time. On the other hand, are we really going to allow Hezbollah to fester on the border over there like we did with Hamas until they try to replicate what Hamas did? That doesn't seem like a good idea either. So I think the idea basically now is we're dealing with Hamas right now. We're dealing with the hostage situation, which of course is a very sensitive situation. And once those two things are dealt with, the leadership of Hamas and the hostage situation, once they are both resolved, God willing, in our favor, then I think the tension will turn more to Hezbollah. I don't think there might be an idea. People might be thinking that, Hezbollah, they're just shooting a few rockets here and there. They're just kind of playing their role. Israel's going to let it go. I don't think that's the situation. I don't think that's possible. We may be delaying action against them, but I think it is inevitable. I don't think we can ignore what they've done. They've done some pretty terrible things, completely unprovoked from our side. So they are going to have to be dealt with. Hopefully, we're learning a serious lesson when it comes to preemptive attacks, which we need to do more of. And I think Hezbollah is going to get their spanking as well very soon.
And do you think? Most people say it's too early now to talk about who's responsible for any why this happened? Do you think it's too early, or do you have any theories about that? Or?
Unfortunately, I do think it's a little too early. I think that we do understand at this point, to some degree, the mistakes of the security services that allowed this to happen. However, I don't think we can ignore, you might call them the conspiracy people, but I don't think they can be ignored in terms of, was there help from the inside? We need to know. I don't think there was anyone who wanted this to happen, but it does have to be investigated as to whether there were people who wanted something to happen in order to hurt Prime Minister Netanyahu or something like that. That does have to be investigated. It cannot be ruled out. However, with that said, a lot of the flaws that happen have been, you can understand what happened. And it's a combination of years of wrong thinking and years of planning by Hamas, who understood our wrong thinking, which, of course, we didn't realize. So as the Hamas plan, as the intelligence gathers more information about the Hamas plan, we are understanding more and more why it was so successful. And by the way, it wasn't completely successful. They wanted much more than they got, and they were completely pushed out of the country, which they were hoping to still be in different communities right now, which they are not. So it did not go, as well as maybe they had the plan called for. But it unfortunately did go well enough to cause this terrible things that happened. But so it can't be ruled. The inside thing cannot be ruled out. There's going to have to be a lot more investigation. And right now, the war is taking precedence. So no, it is still too early, a bit early.
And now, obviously, everyone wants the hostages back. It's a huge priority for everyone that they should all be returned safely. But some of the comments we've seen, like for example, opposition leader Yair Lapid said, Israel should be willing to pay any price to have them back, which is revealing the cards pretty early. And definitely in the diaspora, one of the big campaigns has been on bringing the hostages back. Is that sort of creating pressure on the Israeli government to make concessions to Hamas, or is that the right way of doing things?
I don't think so. Listen, the people who did this attack, the actual people who did this, are the people who were released for Gilad Shalit. It's reasonable to say, and this is, by the way, one of the biggest indictments of Prime Minister Netanyahu, because he did that deal. You can't ignore that. But the release of Hamas terrorists for Gilad Shalit, for 1,000 Hamas terrorists, is what led to this attack. That cannot be ignored or overlooked, and that's what caused this. Physically, this is how they were able to do it. They would not have been able to do this without that. So the idea that we're going to free more terrorists so that in a few years they can do this again or something like that, that's a non-starter. We're in the process of eliminating Hamas right now, not in the process of releasing them. So I think it's a non-starter. Prime Minister Netanyahu has not spoken about anything like that. Yair Lapid is known to say stupid things, so that's not so surprising. The campaign to rescue the hostages, it's nice. Everybody wants the hostages rescued, but the idea that by putting up posters in New York or wherever, it's nice. It's a nice gesture, and God willing, when the hostages are freed, they'll look at that and they'll say, we appreciate your gestures. But the idea that it has anything practically to do with releasing the hostages, I think, is not realistic. The army, the special forces, the whoever are going to try to release the hostages, and God willing, they'll be successful. There's not going to be any terrorists are not going to be released for these hostages. That's not going to happen.
Okay, and maybe can you tell us a bit about your work, what you're doing these days, what's keeping you busy, how people can support your work?
Well, obviously, since we house lone soldiers in our facility here in the Old City, we have hundreds of lone soldiers currently inside Gaza, on the border with Gaza, on the border with Lebanon, and throughout Judea and Samaria. They have limited access to their phones, obviously, but they do have some access. Some of them are very inaccessible, but some of them are very accessible. So we're in touch with all of them as much as possible. We are taking them things. We are speaking with them. We are obviously encouraging them, of course. Everyone, that we're doing that a lot. That's a lot of what's going on right now. But additionally, it's a weird time because many of the men are in the war. Many of the people who are active in strengthening Israel are active in the battle right now. But this is an incredible opportunity to strengthen Jewish communities on the ground. So that is also being done, and we are very active in that in terms of planning, to some degree funding, to manpower, to strategy, all these different ideas of how communities can be safer, larger, how the country can be stronger, basically. So we're very involved in that as well throughout the country. So there's a lot going on, obviously. Everybody is very busy. And we are actually continue to be busy in the same things we're always busy with. So it didn't really necessarily change for us, other than that it's just a lot. It's a lot more.
Yeah, so we encourage, one of our endorsed causes, people who want to support, Israel is to Rabbi Packer. Maybe we'll put your website in the chat shortly.
We very much appreciate it. I would just say that people should know that it really matters. It really very much matters, and it matters more now than before. And I would strongly encourage people to target their donations to projects and different things that they're aware of, and don't just throw your money. I would say, don't just throw your money to the big organizations and hope it ends up where you'd like it to end up. Do a little more research. Do a little more. I know people are busy, but figure out where what you want to accomplish, and accomplish it. We know that big bureaucracy comes at a price. So if you target your funds, you can really have a much bigger impact. It does require a little more research and work and things like that, but it is very possible. It's very real right now. It's always real, but it's especially real right now. I highly encourage people to now is definitely the time.
100%. We agree. We've found, obviously it's hard for Australian Jews to really have a big impact. One of the ways is obviously to send money to people like Rabbi Packer. The other thing which we try and do here in AJA is exposing. So I don't know if you saw in Israel, did you see the video at the Opera House where they were chanting "Gas the Jews" and these kind of things?
I heard about it. I didn't see it. I heard about it. But none of that stuff is surprising.
No, well, that was us. Not chanting. We had an undercover person there who filmed it, and we released it to the international media. So we do lots of things like that to sort of expose what the other side is like, which definitely helps Israel. And David, we might get you to give us an update about what's coming next week. And then we've got a lot of questions. So, and just anyone who wants to ask a question, the best way is to raise your hand. We probably won't get to any written questions.
I can see we've got quite a few questions. I'll do the update in a moment, but I want to throw in one question at this stage for Rabbi Packer, just because you said early on in your introduction that we had unfortunately lost 31 soldiers. I read a number that was closer to 350. Can you clarify, please?
Yeah, sure. Those, unfortunately, are the soldiers that were killed on the first few days within Israel's borders, either in the initial attack or in the response to the attack. And may also include a few soldiers who were killed in the north so far. But in terms of the ground incursion inside Gaza, I think we're at 31, if I'm not mistaken, soldiers who have been killed, which is incredibly tragic. And when you look at each individual stories, very difficult. But if you step back and you consider how much the army has accomplished, it's amazing. It's amazing what they've been able to accomplish.
Okay. Well, I'll do the quick update now. And I'm going to do a little variation, which will take into consideration Rabbi Packer's advice as well, because normally what we say at this point is that at the end of the event, please go to our website, jewishassociation.org.au, where you can become a supporter. Make sure you follow our social media, particularly Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, for the frequent updates. And as Robert said, we have become by far the preferred organisation for information concerning Israel and the conflict. But I'm going to add this. We have donate facilities on our website for AJA and for AJAT, and for any donations that are made after this event, we will pass them on to Rabbi Packer. We are also doing the research. He will be the third worthy cause in Israel that we have supported. The other two are not relevant for tonight, but we can assist with the provision of on-the-ground support to maximise the effectiveness. So if you donate via AJ, I mean, you can do your direct donations, particularly if it's if you have a cause in mind, but you can also do so via AJA using an Australian bank. It might be easier for you. We offer that. Next week we have a very interesting guest, someone who's a co-host with Dennis Prager, a young woman called Julie Hartman, and we'll be talking about the next generation of conservative media hosts. And I'm sure everyone here has heard of the wonderful work that Dennis Prager and Prager University do, in massive supporters in the public relations war on behalf of Israel. And we'll have the younger person in the duo with us next week.
Okay,
we're ready for questions, Robert.
And just to clarify, so for donations to be passed on, it has to be to AJA, right? Not to AJAT. Yeah,
AJAT is our anti-Semitism fighting fund. So, AJA is political.
So if it goes there, we'll be able to pass it on.
Yeah, we'll pass on anything that comes into AJA in the next day or two.
All right, first question. Let's go to Andy. Would you like to ask your question?
Okay, Rabbi, I also live in Israel, in Netanya. I have a question. We hear about the number of Palestinians killed by Israelis, and it's provided by the Palestinian Authority. My question is, can we really believe that? And if not, then why don't we speak up? Thank you.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. No, we cannot believe that at all. We can't believe anything they say. But we don't have any way, I don't think, of ascertaining the actual number at the current time. We may have that in the future, but right now, there's no way for Israel to possibly know how many people have been killed. It's probably much less than that 10,000 number. Of course, people are killed who stand next to terrorists, but the overwhelming majority of people being targeted are terrorists. No random people are being targeted by Israel. If there's when there's like a rally or something, we don't just bomb everybody, although we could. And some people would say we should, but regardless, we don't. And so those numbers are definitely inflated. We just can't know how much. But can we trust the Hamas's numbers? No, not at all. And anybody who would, you would really have to question their sanity.
All right, Jeff, you're next.
Hi. You mentioned that the administration in the United States has a distorted view of the way things are, particularly the president, the de facto President Obama. And I keep hearing him making pacifist noises, implying Israel has done wrong with respect to the not waging a humanitarian war. And Blinken is not much better. He keeps changing his mind about where he stands. How long do you think this state of affairs can exist, whereby one person says one thing, another person, the de facto president, says something else, and the squad and all the other leftist lunatics in the Democrat Party put pressure on Israel that makes the fighting of the war untenable? How long do you think the current state of affairs will last, whereby the mentor president, a virtual president, is able to do what he says he's going to be doing, standing by Israel?
I would say that this is a very fortuitous situation for us in some ways, in that the American administration cannot be taken seriously by any reasonable person, as you mentioned, for all those reasons. And that's good for us because we don't really need any advice right now on how to handle the situation. We need military equipment, that's true, but we don't need political advice. We've had enough of that. And so the fact that the people who are giving the unsolicited political advice are so, the Israeli public, I don't know how the Australians will take this, but the Israeli public loves to love American presidents. Israelis loved George W. Bush and Bill Clinton. They love them both, which Americans could never possibly understand. Israelis love to love American presidents. Israelis hate Barack Obama. And the fact that he's involved in this is great on some level, in that nobody takes anything he says seriously here. So the fact that as you called him, the de facto president seems out to lunch and Blinken seems confused. Everything you said was accurate, and I think it all works in our favor.
I remember my first time I was ever in Israel, I was at a protest against George Bush, to do with like Jonathan Pollard and pressure he was putting on Israel and different things. And it's funny, like we miss those days, like then, it was a president that was, back. Yeah. Anyway, Alan, you ask your question.
Yes, thanks, Robert. Ben, I want to ask you about Mahmoud Abbas. We haven't heard much from him, if anything, certainly not in the West. I wonder if you can expand on that a little bit. Is he not saying much because he wants to keep quiet, or is he being asked not to say much? What do you think's going on?
Well, he's in a very, very bad spot right now. First of all, he's very old. No offense to anybody in the group here, but he is very old, and his health is very bad. Those are facts. So he's got to deal with that. He does not have an obvious successor in place as well. He is currently, whatever word you want to use, allowing, so to speak, the Israeli army to go through the different Arab communities in Judea and Samaria and just arrest people all over the place. They've arrested something like at least 1,500 people. I mean, it's quite a lot. It could even be more. And there's no resistance being put up by the Palestinian Authority in any way. Well, I mean, obviously, if you're a Hamas supporter in the Judea and Samaria, you cannot be very happy with this situation. Maybe you didn't like him before, but now you really don't like him. So he's old and he's in a rough space. And a lot of people, there was a reported attempted assassination on him last night. All you really have to do is push him, and that ought to do it. But the reality is that he's in a very hard spot. I don't know if there's anything he could say right now that would help him. So if he's staying quiet because he just is physically incapable of talking, or if there's nothing he can say right now, I think the only thing I heard him say was that he said the attacks weren't so bad, something to that end, and that did not go over well. So there's not really anything he can say that will endear him to the Israelis right now, and certainly nothing he can say that will endear him to his fellow Arabs. I think this ship has run its course, and I don't know where it's going, but I think that because of this attack, similar to the 6-Day War, and there's a lot of similarities in certain ways, Israel could come out of this thing so much stronger than we ever imagined. with terrible losses, but nonetheless, very, very powerful. And I think that's also what the American government is worried about: the power that the Israeli state and the current even Israeli government could come out from this incident. They're very worried about the big changes that could happen.
Hey, John, you're next.
Thank you, Rabbi. Wonderful to see you and meet you. I'm part of a set of allies, Christian allies, who have come together over this and have been meeting, writing letters to Parliament, to our members and to all of our media. Over 45 Christian allies, organisations. So I just want to encourage you, and that has brought us to pray for Israel. Over 200,000 to 300,000 Christian people that we know about in Australia. So I just want to encourage you with that. And my question is, how have you found in Israel this, the call to arms and the coming together of Jews, whether they're Orthodox, whether they're secular, whether they're, whatever their background is, to come to pray together? I'm just interested in your observations.
I think, well, first of all, we obviously appreciate your support and prayers. I think it's massive. We're in the middle of a war right now, so there's a lot of focus on that. But I mean, I don't know if you saw the situation with the hostages that was rescued, which was an amazing thing. But the amount of, I mean, she is not religious, Orthodox in that sense, as it's normally described, but you see how much religion was involved in the whole thing. And everybody saw that. That was not hidden at all. That was very much showcased by the secular media, who would have laughed at this in the past and made fun of it. But now all of a sudden it's being taken extremely seriously. The woman was from a Sephardic family, and they have some customs that are a little different than some of the stuff we're used to in the Ashkenazic world. But everybody is taking it very seriously right now. So I think there is a very serious spiritual reawakening that's going on. There's a limit to how far it can go right now because so much focus is on the war. But after the war, I think you will see. I remember when I was in the army in Israel, the timing was basically a lot of the guys who were with me. I was in a religious unit. So in the religious unit, a large number of the people who were with me, their parents had become more observant after the 6-day war. And these were the children that resulted from that. And I didn't even know about that. I didn't know about that phenomenon until I actually met these people. So I think we're going to see some very big changes in Israeli society, I think for the better. And I think also from the ultra-Orthodox side, we're also going to see some very big changes also for the better. A lot less as the ultra-Orthodox community grows, the amount of weaponry currently in the ultra-Orthodox community compared to where it was even 3 years ago is shocking, absolutely shocking. And I'm from America originally, from the South, so we're big gun folks over there. But ironically, guns bring people together. They really do, in a certain way. And taking responsibility for your community, your family, your community, and your people also bring people together. And you're seeing a lot of that right now. You're seeing a lot of unity through purpose. And I think that's going to be long. I think that's going to stay very long after the war. So that unity is not it's not a show. It's not a show. It's very serious, and God willing, will be very long lasting after this war is finished. And for the good, there's a lot of good things happening. We had horrible things happen, but there's a lot of good things happen.
Yeah, a couple of things I saw was on Channel 14, which is a very, very good TV station in Israel that we have friends there. I saw one of the presenters, when he heard the hostage was released, he asked to borrow a kippah from one of the other presenters so he could say a bracha. And like, that's just crazy to see that on live TV. And the other thing is a lot of it's, you know, when you look at the videos of the soldiers,
And the other stations did not make fun of him for doing that.
I think that's great. You'd never see that on Australian TV, such a religious blessing or anything. And the other thing was, in a lot of the army bases on Gaza and on the border, when they go in, the soldiers everyone's, you know, saying religious prayers. Like, it's very interesting to see. Like, it looks like the army wearing tzitzis, all these different things. It's nice to see. All right, Hugh, would you like to ask you a question?
Yes, Rabbi, earlier you mentioned that many of the terrorists involved in the October 7th atrocities have been traded for Gilad Shalit. Yeah. Do you think that Israel will enact the death penalty for terrorists that have blood on their hands, either directly or indirectly, because of this? And I do believe, if I'm not wrong, that the death penalty for murder is actually a biblical principle.
So I would just emphasize that the people participating in the terrorist attack that were released for Shalit, we're talking more about the leadership than the actual terrorists on the ground. They would be terrorists on the ground; they're just a little bit older, so they're in the leadership. In terms of the death penalty, you asked me, do I think it will happen? The answer is I do not think it will happen. I do not think it will happen. That's not because I don't want it to happen. This is another thing that Avigdor Lieberman is actually very correct about. But I don't think it's going to happen. You know, it's just one of the issues with it is can you really do the death penalty for the terrorists from Gaza and not do it for the other terrorists from other places? Like, why would you limit it? So it would have to be quite broad. There would be a lot of people subject to this thing, which of course I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but it would be much bigger than just the people from Gaza. I don't think it's going to happen. Certainly, there are many sources in Judaism that would support it, including common sense. But there's a large remains in Israel a European influence. And Western European influence, and Western European influence is very strong when it comes. Just to give you another example, that is the Palestinian Authority no longer inflicts the death penalty on Arabs who sold land to Jews, or even people who've worked with Israel. Hamas does, but Palestinian Authority does not, because of that European Western influence. That they get a lot of money from Europe and they don't want to risk that. So they actually stopped executing people a while ago. I think it'd be, I would support such a move, obviously, personally, but I don't think it's going to happen right now. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think it's going to happen right now.
All right. Rachel, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned on this call and doesn't seem to be getting much mention anywhere is the fact that there were hundreds, if not more, actual Gazan civilians involved in the massacre. And this has been reported by victims of the massacre, that they saw them come in, they were able to differentiate between them and Hamas because they weren't dressed in the uniform. And if anything, I heard that the Hamas terrorists basically just broke through the blockade and got into the kibbutzim and opened the path for the Gazan civilians to create all the worst of the atrocities, and no mention has been made of finding them, prosecuting them, any kind of follow-up. It's kind of like, oh, don't kill the poor Gazan civilians, the innocent civilians. They're not so innocent, and why is that detail being buried? My second question is, there's a lot of talk about Israel caving to the demands for a ceasefire when the hostages are released. But surely we cannot, because a ceasefire under any circumstances means the end of getting rid of Hamas. So what do you think is going to happen with the huge amount of pressure that will be put on us to ceasefire if we actually do get the hostages back?
Okay, so in terms of your first thing, you're 100% correct. Obviously, yes, there were thousands of Arabs, and there were definitely tens of thousands more who would have come if they had known better, and would have had transportation. Yeah, no, this whole idea of innocent civilians in Gaza is a complete fake. It's a complete fake. Hamas was elected democratically, and there's no reason to believe they wouldn't be elected again. And most of the people who wouldn't vote for Hamas wouldn't vote for them because they're not radical enough. They would vote for more radical parties. There are no liberals in Gaza. They've all been killed or chased out, or pushed off buildings. They're gone. So this idea that there are innocent civilians, of course, there are young children who have not engaged in any activity. But besides that, it's a fake. It's a complete fake thing. Yes, they're all very involved. And as you pointed out, the bulk of the terrible atrocities were not committed by the terrorists because they were busy fighting the soldiers and security teams. It was the everyday, so to speak, Arabs who engaged in really the horrific stuff. They didn't have guns, so they. Anyway, yes. So you're correct. You're 100% correct. The world in general likes to minimize the number of bad guys so they don't have to be killed. But the reality is, there are a lot of people who are going to have to answer for what happened here if they survive the war. And I don't think Israel has any intention of letting these people go. Just an interesting point. I don't know if you saw a fascinating thing. An Arab, a Bedouin, was captured by the terrorists. And these were the actual terrorists, not the regular people, so to speak. And they interrogated him and realized 100% that he was an Arab. And they killed him on video. And his family has offered $1 million to anyone who can give the identities of the Arabs who did that, so they themselves can go find them and kill them. And $1 million, I don't care how rich you are, that's a serious amount of money. These are rich Arabs, but nonetheless. So there's no one's going to be let go here. There's not going to be any amnesty situation. In terms of the ceasefire, Prime Minister Netanyahu has been very clear that there may be a potential for a limited ceasefire if the hostages are all returned. However, that ceasefire, we're talking about helping the civilian population, which you and I have both noted they are not great folks. But that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about stopping to eliminate Hamas or stopping to hunt down every single person who was involved with this. That's not what's being discussed. No one is discussing that. Just an idea that maybe there'll be a ceasefire of some kind that will enable more civilians to move out of the area if all the hostages are freed, which I don't think there is a possibility where Hamas frees all the hostages. So again, this is all just talk that's going on that I don't think really has any real meaning. I don't think you need to worry about a ceasefire.
All right, next question, Philip.
I thank you very much, Rabbi, for your interesting talk. I've got two questions as well. Number one, we hear a lot about Hamas, but I hear nothing about Islamic Jihad. They're also a terrorist group in Gaza that's been firing rockets at Israel. So that's number one. Number two is, a while back I saw a clip that indicated that the Israeli government has voted to keep the Palestinian Authority going. Can you explain why?
Yeah. Okay, well, let's start with your first question. Islamic Jihad, definitely very serious terrorists, bad people. You don't hear a lot about them right now because they kind of missed the boat on this one, I'm sure they were involved, and they by the way, are reportedly holding hostages. But they've missed the boat. Hamas has certainly politically one up them here. Additionally, a lot of the support for Islamic Jihad is located in the southern Gaza Strip, and most of the battles are taking place in the northern Gaza Strip. So it's not like it's that far away, and they are definitely suffering casualties. But they've been kind of they're not a very large organization compared to Hamas. Hamas, you're talking about tens of thousands of people. Islamic Jihad, you're probably talking about hundreds. So they're a much smaller group. They are shooting rockets here and there, but they're very limited in their capacities because of their lack of manpower. But definitely there should be no reason for Israel to discriminate. That they should it should be all inclusive. In terms of the Palestinian Authority, that is an ongoing mystery to a lot of the intellectual world. The reality is that the Israeli government continues to believe that the existence of the Palestinian Authority brings some level of I wouldn't use the word peace, but stability maybe to the area, and the only way to do that is by funding them. They don't have the ability to run their mafia without funding. So Israel is the funder of their mafia, and for now, the Israeli government has decided that it's better with them than without them. Whether that's a good idea or not is definitely debatable. And there certainly are people within the Israeli government who do not feel it's a good idea. But for now, for better or for worse, it's been decided that they should still exist. And if they are going to exist, you got to pay for it. It's not free.
All right, we've just got a couple minutes left. Let's see how many questions we can get through. Quite a few. Helen, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, I wanted to know, because I've watched a lot of updates on what's happening in Israel on TikTok. How much of an influence does TikTok have on the whole narrative about Israel? And it's heartwarming to see the Israeli soldiers are being so cheerful and positive. But how much of that does have an influence on the rest of the world, on other people?
I think TikTok, like a lot of social media, you only see the people you like. So it encourages everybody to be what they want to be. So for Israelis, we're very encouraged by TikTok videos of the soldiers and of the people helping the soldiers and all that kind of stuff. And on the Arab side, they're very encouraged by the pictures of terrorism and of the massacre and all that. It tends to just be kind of like kind of like alcohol. It just makes you more of who you are. So I don't think it has such a major influence. It's just kind of like watching a pep rally, I guess you could say, something like that. It's an encouraging, like watching a parade of your side. But it does, in the past, TikTok has been responsible for encouraging random attacks in the streets by Arabs against Jews, and this has been a major problem in the past. But right now, I think it's just it's kind of like a cheerleading platform.
There you go. All right. Next question. Would you like to unmute and ask #winning?
Thank you, Rabbi, for your enlightening talk. My question is that when Israel reestablishes control in Gaza and we're able to paint it blue, do you think it is important to keep the Gush Katif and other places open to teach all future generations the lesson that giving away land never works?
I hope it would not be necessary because it should be so obvious. The idea that you can give land to terrorists who have pledged to kill you without any kind of agreement, even with an agreement, obviously it wouldn't be a great idea. But without an agreement, I mean, the level of stupidity that is involved in this is really unfathomable. And it was done by many people who I'm sure feel really stupid right now. They got all these people killed. They are responsible for this. I mean, obviously Hamas is responsible, but those people who push the policies, they led to this. They should feel bad. And in that sense, I would say you're correct. there should be these monuments to remind us of their incredible stupidity. So it should not be repeated again. I don't see how it possibly could be repeated again, but I'm not sure how it happened in the first place either. So it's unbelievable how stupid this was to do this, and the price has been, as the price often is when you do something incredibly stupid, it has been quite high.
100%. All right, last question we've got time for. Shoshana, would you like to quickly ask your question?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Rabbi. And I love your use of the word stupid. I mean, it is stupid stuff. The question I have is about Israeli Arabs. How is that going? Are they a threat internally?
Sure. So there's certainly a potential threat. They've been very quiet. I think they're well aware. Israeli society is not in a place to be very tolerant right now. We're not very interested in fluffy it's very real right now, and the Arabs are well aware of that. There are many Israeli Arabs, of course, who are very happy with their lifestyles, and they're not interested in so they're certainly not interested in Hamas being in charge of them. I mean, Hamas has more or less done a suicide bombing right now for the entire area they control. Now, while many of those people do support Hamas, I don't know if they were up for the suicide bombing. So here, too, these people, they're not interested necessarily in that. They might not like Jews, and they might not like Israel. And if given the opportunity, they may take drastic action. But they don't feel like they have the opportunity right now that's in their favor. And therefore, they're sitting at home and hoping this thing ends as quickly as possible.
Okay, all right. Well, I want to thank you, Rabbi Ben Packer. Excellent as usual. Very, very good update. Everyone should follow Rabbi Packer. Gives a weekly update on your Facebook account. Is that right, Rabbi Ben Packer?
Yes. Ben Packer. I think it's Ben Packer.
Ben Packer. Everyone can follow it. It's very good about the weekly events.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
So there you go. Coming up for people who want to listen on 3ZZZ.com.au is Morris Klein's show. Also very good. Everyone should listen. And as we heard next week, we've got a very exciting talk. So anyone who wants to make a donation, we've put the link if you want to give directly to Rabbi Packer's organization, the Jerusalem Heritage House, or as David mentioned, we're happy to facilitate that. I think, did you say for the next 24 hours or something?
Next couple of days we'll do it, yeah.
Couple of days, there you go. Any donations that come to AJA, not to AJ Tzedakah, to AJA, the main thing, we'll also transfer that. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you again, Rabbi, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.